So, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it's nice to welcome you all to the first Pan-European SPIN webinar, which is Strengthening Science Policy Interface for Informed Forest Governance. So, a goal I think that we all share. My name is Peter Meyer. I'm the director of the Austrian Research Center for Forests, but I'm also the chair of the Pan-European SPIN, so it's a pleasure for me to welcome you all. Why are we doing this? This is a good question. I think in research, we all sometimes suffer that we have a lot of evidence, and we feel, why is policymaking not following the evidence? And this is a complicated partnership or environment in its own, and we all experience that. And as I have learned many years ago, only 10% of the research knowledge is directly impacting and used by policymakers. But we will hear much more and much more profound about this, how the science policy interface works from our keynote speaker, and then also the other speakers who will reflect on the keynote that we will hear today. So I'm personally really looking forward to that meeting, because I think we will all hear things that we all can need and use for our daily work. And therefore, again, a very warm welcome. What is SPIN? It's the Regional Science Policy Information Network. So it's really intended to focus on regional issues, on the regional policy arena, and provide targeted knowledge in different forms, from a quick response to policy briefs. So we really try to use and also try out different mechanisms, how they work to ensure that IUFRO, also in the world regions, has a possibility to provide the profound knowledge that IUFRO has with its member organizations, and of course also you as persons, to policy and policy developments. It's a pan-European effort, so that's also very important to understand, because we think in big regions and not necessarily only European Union. While we are all aware that European Union politics provides a very important factor in all the activities that we are doing. So thank you again for joining. And before we start with our keynote speaker, I'll invite the president of IUFRO, Daniela Kleinschmit, to say a few words. Daniela, please.
Thanks a lot, Peter. That is really a great pleasure. It's great to see you all here and welcoming and starting our European SPIN. And Peter already so nicely explained what it is all about. And it's great to see that it is now kicked off and up and running with this first official launch. And maybe to say a few words about IUFRO and well, you know that this SPIN, so the Regional Science Policy Information, is based on an international and globally recognized position of IUFRO in advancing not only science forests or forest sciences on forests, but as well in facilitating and in fostering science policy interactions. So we have done that for many, many years, and IUFRO is highly recognized in this international political arena, in particular in the UN arenas, when it comes to forest related issues. And political decision making, what we have recognized so far is as well that it is increasingly not taking place anymore only at the international level, but many things have been downplayed to the regional level, and many decisions on forests are taken at the regional level and not at the international level anymore. And this was the reason why we have invented SPIN. So coming from the international UN arena, where IUFRO has been highly recognized already in science policy interactions, we are now going to the regional level, where we want to utilize our international network of scientific experts in its diverse areas we have for the needs of the regional political decision making. And we want to support this by forest science evidence and which are sort of gathered around policy problems and making it possible and understandable to enable science-based solutions to forest-related challenges. We have a specific mechanism within this spin as well, which is a SAM, which is a swift action mechanism, which should bring some direct sort of responses to political decision makers in the regions from our network of international researchers. Because not automatically, only if the need of political decision making is specifically in one area does not mean that this area is captured well, in particular in this region, but partly the experts are as well outside of that. So, but we want to take the chance as well, not only to respond to the needs of political decision makers, but we want to inform as well political decision makers about international trends and knowledge that might become relevant in the future in the region and in this in particular in Europe. And for this, we have invented the spin, which will kick off today with the European one. And I have to say, this is sort of the pilot. And we have another pilot, which is taking place on the African continent. So we have a regional African spin as well. And that has kicked off already. And we have seen a lot of enthusiasm and engagement in that. And I'm well sure that it will work the same here too. And I have to thank the core group of this spin, and in particular, Peter Meyer, organizing, coordinating this, and for all the others supporting this, because there is a lot of work in the background going on. And of course, I'd like to take already the chance to thank my wonderful colleague, Michael Böcher, for being here, because he is the real expert on science policy interaction. And I'm sure with this keynote he will give to us, we will have a perfect start for the spin. So thanks a lot for being here. I'm really excited.
Thank you very much, Daniela, and thank you for also initiating this initiative of the Pan-European activity. The colleagues what to expect. So we have the keynote speakers and then the reactions by the other speakers, but we also want you, of course, to interact. I think it's really about your collective knowledge about experiences, how the science policy interface works, success models and all that. Ideally, we find some factors at the end of this meeting that we also could summarize then and use for the work of IUFRO, but also spread it to you again as a sort of guideline for our daily work. So it's really about how best to use science in the governance and policy sphere. There will be the possibility to raise your hands or to use the chat. So please feel free, even during the speakers, you could write things in the chat and we'll collect that for questions afterwards. But after all the speakers have spoken, we of course would like to engage with you and share experiences. It's really all about that. So having said that, Michael, thanks also from my side that you're here and that you have accepted to be the keynote speaker. Dr. Michael Böcher is, introduce you shortly, is a professor of political science with a focus on sustainable development at the Institute of Social Sciences in Magdeburg. In his political science research, Michael deals with topics of sustainability, e.g. in fields such as bioeconomy policy, climate policy, environmental policy, and sustainable regional development in rural areas. In addition, his research deals with the question of how knowledge transfer and policy advice systems must be designed in order to promote political change towards sustainable development. So you're really the best person to inform us about how we can go on and which mechanisms we could use to be successful. Michael, the floor is all yours.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for this nice introduction, but please evaluate my speech after I have spoken, not before, yes. So I might say something about the setting. I'm currently in Gabon, in Libreville, and so maybe the connection maybe changes to a little bit instability, so I apologize for this. But we are now here at the conference around these issues, yes, knowledge transfer, strengthening African-European partnerships in forest research. And we have one project here that we presented yesterday, exactly about knowledge integration in partnerships between African research institutions and European research institutions on the topic of forest-related climate change and sustainable forest management. So this is very interesting. So I'm very interested in the spin line dealing with Africa, because we have here a big program and a big project. So it would be very nice to connect as well with the spin initiative for Africa. Yes. So thank you very much for this introduction, and please, yeah, I was a little bit unsure what is expected. My speech is more conceptual, yes, to stimulate some thoughts, some discussions, and you are the forest experts more than me, so you can adjust it to your experiences, and maybe afterwards we can discuss it a little bit more. Please go to the next slide. Yeah, first of all, I think as the introductory slide, I've chosen to use a definition. What are science policy interfaces? It's always good to think about what we're talking about. And I found one of the many science policy interface definitions is this from Vandenhove in Futures Journal 2007. It means social processes which encompass relations between scientists and other actors in the policy process, and which allow for exchanges, co-evolution, and joint construction of knowledge with the aim of enriching decision making. So this is, I think, more or less a normative expectation of science policy interfaces, that we work together from different sectors of society, from science, from political practice, from forestry practice, to find better solutions. Yes. And the illustration is from the Hollywood movie The Day After Tomorrow. So you see the idea. We have one famous researcher who spoke to the UN General Assembly. And then, of course, the other side of the coin is that the US president, yeah, you see what he said in the movie, maybe you should stick to science and leave policy to us. So this is the problem. Yes, we have politicians and political actors who are interested in gaining votes in their own interests, I don't know, making money in the business and so on. And on the other hand, we have idealistic scientists who work on big solutions and try to sell them, yes, and are really depressed when politics act like politics do. So please hand over to the next slide. Second, why do we need science policy interfaces? I think that is clear, especially in this round of colleagues here. Many political problems can only be solved by sticking to scientific evidence. Think of climate change, of sustainable forest management, of securing biodiversity, and so on and so on. And this is a nice quotation as well. Without science and research, challenges such as the corona pandemic cannot be overcome. And it's okay, I think, to refer again to the corona pandemic, because during corona, I think there were big debates about the role of science in society that we have never been faced before. Yes. There were so many discussions about the role of science. Are they replacing politics? Are they dealing with, I don't know, limited knowledge, and politics act on limited knowledge and these things? Yes. Science, they develop concrete problem-solving strategies and provide advice to politicians and society. And I think it's very clear that even not only in this health policy issues and climate policy issues, but I think in forest governance and forest policy, this is discussed for a long time. Yes, I remember serving in IUFRO as one of the organizers of the science policy interactions subgroup, and I think it began in, I don't know, 2007 or something like this. So it's a long time ago that we discuss always the same question. So this is very interesting. And did we find a solution? I'm not quite sure. You see some of these papers, for example, in Navigating the Science Policy Interface Forest Researcher Perspectives. This is a paper that was built around questioning the forest policy and forestry scientists, what they think and what they expect about science policy interaction. So it's very interesting read. And on the other hand, you see the activists here listen to science. It's very famous, this bon mot, yeah, how to say. Everyone is asking, yeah, political actors should listen to science, and it's much better to just act on, I don't know, political interests. So please head over to the next slide. I think that was something that is some general insights. And now I come more to the scientific side of analyzing these science policy interactions or science policy interfaces. In an overview article from Sokolowska at Alita 2019, they present 3 different phases of how science sees the science policy interface, yes. And they differentiate between different models in phase 2 from the 1960s to 1970s. It was after World War II, very big ideas of how science can provide something for society. And, you know, it was the time when the moon landing was planned and so on. A big trust in science and the idea that science directly informs political action. Yeah, so-called linear models. So we produce scientific knowledge and science, and political actors say, hey, thank you very much. Of course, we use it in doing politics. Then after empirical research and practical experience, it came to the phase 2, more interactive models, in which it was discussed, okay, there might be some, not only an unidirectional interaction between science and politics, but also bidirectional, which means that political actors and bureaucrats even define, I don't know, research programs, research questions, and demand something from science. So we have more interactive models. And then I think it is a very good differentiation. Phase 3, since the 2000 and later, we have debates about how to integrate more actors from society into the science policy interfaces. Yes, we have scholars, we have research still, we have politicians and bureaucrats, but as well, the question is, how can responsible science be realized? That was a concept of the European Union, by integrating societal actors, by integrating lay knowledge, indigenous knowledge, and so on, local people's knowledge, and so on and so on. So it's more the question now that is some kind of an empirical result that all science policy interactions are embedded in a cultural and societal background. Yes, and these societal and cultural background differs. Of course, it depends on where you are at the world, yes. And so it's very good to have the SPIN initiative, because I think you need regionally adjusted science policy interfaces. And what we discuss in Europe, it's not the same that we discussed here where I'm at the moment in Central Africa, yes, for Central African forest policy. Similar problems, but other solutions maybe. So it's very, very good to have these discussions about the embeddedness of science into society. So please hand over to the next slide. And my message, my core message is what I always say to practitioners and I don't know, some colleagues who want to learn more about how to do policy advice practically. I think what is very important still is to realize that the different systems that should be interacting more are relying on different rationales. Yes, it's a scientific system, of course, it's not politics, and politics not science. So this is very basic, but I think this is very relevant still. First of all, in the scientific system, we produce knowledge based on scientific methods and standards, not always relying to, I don't know, societal needs. Then we have many different solutions. They are often preliminary and contested, yet not every solution that is produced in science is uncontested in the eyes of other scientists. Normally, we do our work under the criterion of heading to the truth, whatever this is, yes. Normally, for example, my position at the university, I don't have to include political aspects in my research. And of course, very important, we need the freedom of science. This is as well a very current debate if you think about the US and even in Europe. I say later on a little bit more about it. But the political system, this is another system, yes. The criterion of power is the most relevant criterion for political actors. And the idea is we need in politics collectively binding political decisions. And they have to integrate different social interests. They have to value different interests. And these interests are not always in line with the best scientific solution. And of course, we have conditions of uncertainty, limited time. Mostly political actors show no or little interest only in scientific policy advice. And of course, conflicts of power are the most important aspects of political processes, not what is the best scientific finding is to apply. So please go to the next slide. Thank you. Just to illustrate this, you see this assessing the impact of climate change is just, I don't know, a little bit icebreaker. You see to the left the scientists working on their graphs and their data, and the politicians, yes, in contrast, voting, survey, opinion polls. Hand over to the next slide, please. It's very nice to have this remote action here. I just have to talk. And I talk now a little bit what I think, what are current trends for the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years or so. Yes, I think two very, very important trends can be observed in the science policy interactions, in the science policy interface debate. Yes, first of all, I think we can see that there's a new age of politics. Politics gets more powerful, for example, than compared to the 1960s, where there's very open-minded view of science and scientific progress. Now we have a situation in which politics, even on highest levels, ignores scientific facts. We talk about post-truth politics after the Trump administration came into force. And another, I don't know, another danger for scientific findings, for scientific progress, is the rise of populist radical right parties, especially in Europe. And these parties attack science and scientists, of course. If you think about climate scientists, gender scientists, and so on, these are under attack by these kind of new powerful parties, and it is a little bit in line with the new age of politics, because they claim we represent the normal people. The normal people act on intuition. They don't need this climate hoax, and this is a system that is established by high-level elites and so on. And you see this one of the many disturbing tweets from Donald Trump, just for illustration. And the other thing, I think a current other trend that is very, very important for science policy interactions at the moment is something that is called The Death of Expertise by Tom Nichols. Very good book and very good article he wrote about. He means that Google-fueled, Wikipedia-based blog sudden collapse of any division between professionals and laymen, students and teachers, knowers and wanderers, in other words, between those of any achievement in an area and those with none at all. This is a problem for scientific policy advice, because nobody knows anymore who are reliable scientists compared to, I don't know, some influencers on YouTube who can claim everything. Yes, under Corona pandemic, you saw some so-called experts who said all the vaccinations are bad and don't get the shots and so on. And in climate policy, it's the same. Yes, you find a lot of, I don't know, conspiracy theories that are, they, even in these things, they claim to be based on alternative science and the real scientist, because the other science is more or less the mainstream and it is produced by elites and so on. Very, very problematic, because I have no answer how to deal with these problems, yes, from the classic science policy interface research. So please go to the next slide. And another current trend, and I warn a little bit against this trend, because we have, under these conditions, there are more and more discussions about what the scientists should do. Yes, and we have some debates that scientists should become activists and should do civil disobedience. You see this paper in Nature Climate Change, Civil Disobedience by Scientists Helps Press for Urgent Climate Action. I can say no, because science is always powerless compared to political actors. So if, as a scientist, I go to demonstrations, I have no more power than any other citizen that go for demonstrations. And connected with this is a very, very long call, I think, since the beginning of the 1990s and the 2000s, to realize projects that are more transdisciplinary and using co-production ideas, which means that practitioners and scientists together work on solutions and more influence of science onto the research process itself. So this is, I don't know, yes, we can discuss this. And what I like more is the other side of the story. There are still some scholars who prefer the idea that we still need a strict separation of the roles, that it's always clear which kind of role we take as scientists or as practitioners, and you need the separation of roles as protective shield for science. Yes, if you think about Corona, and I don't know how it was in other countries, but in Germany, at the end, the scientists were accused for the lockdowns and not the politicians who take the decisions. Yes. And this is a nice paper as well, in defense of the ivory tower, why philosophers should stay out of politics. Very, very interesting read. So please go to the next slide. I know that I don't have so much time, but this is a topic I could talk on, I think, hours. So, and I present our own finding, or our own idea is this so-called research integration utilization model that has been developed by Max Grott, my former supervisor, and me at the Göttingen University, and we're still working with the model and improve it and doing empirical studies, for example, now here in this project related to 3 African countries. And the idea of the RIU model is that we have bidirectional connections between research and utilization, and the decisive stage is the integration stage, which means in integration we have this so-called active orientation of research towards practical problems. It's a selection process. Yeah, practitioners and political actors select findings that are useful for them in the line of their power relations and what they need. Yes, it is selected based on political interests, and it's utilized by using power, of course. And that was further developed by colleagues from Göttingen and us as well, and Michael Kirchner and Max Grott from Göttingen developed the idea of so-called integration forums, which means that we have in many of the science policy interactions so-called integration forums, which means these are the physical locations where these integration forums took place. What we do, for example, today in our SPIN webinar is some kind of an integration forum, because we talk between scientists and practitioners and so on. This could be interesting. Please go to the next slide. Yeah, and you see this here. You have as well this research integration utilization. You have scientific information. Not every scientific information is used by political actors or practitioners. Therefore, we have the integration forms where physically meet scientists and researchers and practical actors and political actors. And then they select, discuss, and at the end, it's the knowledge is selected based on actors' interests, and plus actors' power leads to utilization, they say in forestry practice. And of course, in the end, the utilization is not everything that is produced in science, but it is something that is in line with political interests and the power of decision makers, of course, or power of, I don't know, in businesses, forest enterprises, and so on. And I think these integration forums are very important because there are so many different ideas of how to organize these integration forums. And I think my most, I don't know, the most important statement I would say today is it is very important to select the right integration forum for specific topics and for specific subtopics in forestry science or in forest governance. And not every integration forum is the best for every potential solution. And so they have done the study on natural hazard risk management, is a good read, and they empirically observe different integration forums. And please go to the next slide. And I think a little bit now about what are the current trends regarding forest governance. I think first of all, I think there's still some relevance of sectoral forest science policy interfaces, the classic things. Yes, we have talked about these departmental research organizations like the Austrian Research Center for Forestry. We have something like this in Germany as well. We have the EFI, we have Forest Europe, and so on. These are more, I would say, based on the sectoral idea of forest policy making. But you know this more than me, but in many other policy domains are decisions taken that are relevant for forests and for forestry. Yes, for example, climate policy. Yeah, think about the talks about funding these carbon sinks, for example, here in Africa now with the new ideas of integrating carbon and financing carbon sinking functions of forests and so on. From biodiversity, bioeconomy. Yes, I was a member of the German Advisory Council on Bioeconomy, so we talked a lot of forest-based bioeconomy as well. This makes it even more complicated. So I would say the SPIN initiative is very good, not only to adjust science policy interfaces in line of different regions, but also in line on different policy subfields that are related to forestry. And I've learned from a paper from colleagues that European forest policy is how to say it, it's not very orchestrated. There's not much policy coherence, but there are a lot of decisions taken in, for example, agricultural policy, biodiversity policy that are then relevant for forest policy. So you cannot use one science policy interface in forest governance for Europe, and then it's relevant for every political process that aims at regulating forestry issues. So I think in many projects that are undertaken, yes, that are forest related, these so-called applied research projects, they are all aiming at creating new integration forums. Yes, I remember doing different projects, and everywhere it was stated, yeah, we need some policy recommendations at the end, and we need stakeholder integration and so on. And I would a little bit warn, it's more an alert now, because I think we don't need too many integration forums. Sometimes a better success strategy could be to identify the map of existing integration forums and then to check out if we really need a new one, or can we not better try to integrate our findings in the existing and accepted forums. Yes, this is very important, because we know that especially practitioners and politicians don't have much time. Yes. And sometimes you have new integration forums built around certain projects, and the most powerful actors are not taking part. Yes. So sometimes using existing forums could be much more successful, and it's always important finding and using the right integration forum with the most powerful stakeholders relevant for certain findings and for certain scientific evidence that support science-based solutions. So please go to the next slide. Thank you very much. So now it's open for discussion and evaluation of my speech. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed the remote perspectives. What was really nice. I just could talk. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation.
So thank you, Michael. This was great, and you did not disappoint with what you were saying. On the contrary, so it was really a very important overview on this sphere, and I think there are many questions which we might not be able to solve now, but I think it's also a guiding instrument that you presented for us in the work to come. So please, colleagues, if you have questions, please hold them or write them in the chat. We will have a general discussion afterwards. Michael, you will stay with us, or for the next hour or so. Yeah. That would be great. Then we can also continue the discussion, because now we have three speakers that react in a way to your keynote or provide their own experiences. And we start with Dr. Anja Gassner. Anja has more than 25 years of experience in rural development projects in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, working at the interface of livelihood development and sustainable resource management. She has joined the World Agroforestry in 2010 as the head of a research methods unit. In 2017, she has led a global policy project for integrating trees on farms, international plans to support governments' commitments to the United Nations CBD. And she has joined the Global Landscape Forum as a science and policy advisor in 2020. So very impressive work, and a lot of work in the science policy interface. So Anja, we very much look forward to your perspective. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Peter, and thanks for having me. I'm also very excited to be part of this panel today. First of all, thanks very much to Michael. That was a really comprehensive overview, and he touched on so many points that if I was responding to all of them, I don't think anybody would be able to ask any further question. So let me try maybe to just pick up two aspects that you said. The first one, as you were saying, like, you know, the political system, it's based on like social interests. Reflecting from where we are, I mean, CIFOR-ICRAF as one of the CGIAR centers, or like two of the CGIAR centers, technically, we are applied research organization. We have 55 years of doing projects, and that's our mandate. And everything we do we have all our science and our research has to deliver social and environmental impact by definition. That's what we are evaluated against. Yes, we also evaluated for our scientific publications, but that's sort of like just a nice clap on the back. It's really about, okay, what's our contribution to society? If we're doing that mainly through directly work in the global south, but also, and I think this is where really the relevance comes back to also to Europe, is that the very landscapes we are working in the global south are the sourcing landscapes in Europe. So I was just drinking coffee, where our coffee comes from, the cacao comes from, and all of that. This is where our clients are. This is where we as an organization are supposed to deliver scientific-based solutions that have an impact on coffee farmers' lives and making it environmentally sustainable. So with that background, like everything we do is very much, you said the word earlier, Michael, about co-creation. So we see that the landowners, and I guess that's also applicable, I mean, I guess it is applicable to the European context, because most forest is actually owned by private forest owners. So we work with these people, actually understanding, we recognize, I mean, yes, of course, they know how to make their forests profitable. Of course, they know how to manage the trees so they become climate resistant. Okay, the climate resistant, we can talk about that later. That might be. But in general, these people, that's their bread and butter. They know how to do this. They're actually the experts. So in that, we interact with communities to say, okay, where is your technical, where's the gap in the technical knowledge? What do you need from us to help you with solutions? So the core design process that we have is very much looking at, okay, local knowledge and science, and how together, and I think, Michael, you said this, how together we are creating a solution. So this is how we work. And we've been doing that for 45 years. So I wanted to do that. The second one is talking about, you talked about the integration forums. As and in our individual projects, and thanks, Peter, you were mentioning like a project that I was involved in, which actually resulted in agriculture being recognized in the latest global biodiversity framework, which it wasn't. How do we actually do that? We bring in civil society. As we work with the community, we recognize that it's civil society that puts pressure back on policymakers. But we're also looking for champions within the stakeholder group of policymakers, whereby obviously policymakers, it's not, I don't need to tell you that. It's like, it's not the minister. It's like whoever is the lobby group around them, and like understanding what's the political system you're working in and who provides the briefing to the minister. So it's being in the room. And thanks, Michael, for saying it's not just setting up new forums, setting up new platforms. It's figuring out where are the conversations held. When does a minister has to go and give a presentation, and being there and saying, hello, remember, we are your technical advisor, super happy to help you with the presentation. In the countries where we work, most of the times, any reports that the ministry has to give back to various UN forum, it's not written by them. It's written by consultants. So it's not, and they're very, very happy to actually get like building blocks from us and to have pieces written. So that bit on the civil society, I think it's, and then I will stop on the civil society where we talk about forests. I've noticed when we are in higher level political science interfaces in Europe, we talk about carbon. So we kind of like abstract a tree into carbon and greenhouse gas emissions, which has, I would say, pretty little relevance to civil society, normal people. Like, take an example of my mother. My mother is 80. She has one of the last standing trees in her garden in her entire street. Because she lives in a rural area, everybody is old, and people actually cut down trees because they don't know how to manage them. It becomes an issue of managing the trees. And so where everybody agrees that tree of my mom is beautiful and it provides the shade. So do we really write only scientific papers which actually argue for the effect of forest and trees on temperature, or do we change the communication to say, well, if you stand in your garden, or if you stand at a bus stop and you're standing under the tree, of course everybody knows there's a temperature effect. So I think it's linking our science to people's own experience, to their emotions. Also what Michael said, in the era we are at, where decisions and political debates are not longer actually informed by thought through feasibility studies and case studies. It's emotionally. How do we link to people's emotion? How do we talk to the people that actually need our help, the landowners? And the last one, and then I'll stop. Just wanted to point out that as CIFOR-ICRAF, we hold the secretary of the Global Landscapes Forum, which I think is one of the most effective and the largest policy science interfaces at the moment in the space of the Paris Agreement, biodiversity and restoration. And there's a lot to learn of how to bring people into the discussion. And then thanks, I'm just passing on to the next one.
Anja, excellent. Thanks very much. And also bringing in the emotions. I think that's what we all learn in communications, is pictures and emotions. So then that appeals to whoever we want to reach. So thanks very much. And also your example that you need to be close to the minister's advisors. I think that's also something that is very, very true. And thanks, and looking forward to discussions and questions to you afterwards. Thanks very much. Having said that, we will move to our second person that reacts to the keynote, that it is Marek Metslaid. He's the professor of ecology at the Estonian University of Life Sciences and currently serves as director of the Institute of Forestry and Engineering. His research spans silviculture, forest ecology, forest management, plant ecology, soil science, biodiversity, and natural resource management. As a director of the Institute, he leads efforts to integrate ecological insights into forest management and policy, contributing to sustainable forestry practices and biodiversity conservation across Estonia and beyond. So that tells us where you're from. Marek, it's very nice that you are here and provide your perspective.
Thank you very much, and I really enjoyed the keynote speech, and it was a lot of content that certainly I still have to think it over a bit. But I picked up a few points that I would like to address. I think the most important what came to my mind is that we can solve the problems by sticking to scientific evidence. I think this we should underline, and when we talk about the forest ecosystems or forest management or forestry in a broader sense, then science is vital for designing resilient, climate smart forest management practices that are addressing actually the increasing disturbance risks, for example. Are they pests or insect pests or pathogens or wildfires? Of course, storms that are more frequent or extreme weather events that are occurring. So this is something where we should stick to science and have the decision-making processes based on science. Just as one example, which is a very broad area, but its scientific knowledge is extremely valuable and relevant here. And then there was this different policies that are involved today: climate policy, biodiversity policy, bioeconomy policy, and so on. In that respect, I would highlight that in order to ensure the effective future governance, there is a need for robust and multifunctional models that can balance the demands for wood as a renewable natural resource, carbon sequestration and storage. That has been highlighted, that carbon is one of the issues or aspect that is highly in the political discussions and also in the science forums, and then of course biodiversity conservation, and today it was also highlighted here that not only international level but also at the regional level. So we have these different levels where we have to act, and all that we support or enhanced circular bioeconomy. I like to use also the circular before the bioeconomy, so it can be circular bioeconomy or just bioeconomy, but because some of the material can be recycled and used again, that is natural. And then the third, science policy interaction. Yes, this is something that we are highlighting or discussing very much, and here it's of course very important that the scientific findings that are rapidly adopted by policymakers. Here was already mentioned that links to the policymakers or the ministers' advisors. I have myself this experience, and it is very important to be on time. So timely, you have to act timely. Either you address something with a comment in the media or a policy brief or a one-pager. This is also very important that it's timely, and the length of your message has to be appropriate. Usually, yeah, one page is already sometimes too long. Maybe one paragraph or maximum two short ones. But of course, the message is important to be sent, and sometimes maybe by telephone you have only 2 minutes to tell the message. And yes, so it's very important in order to ensure that the scientific findings are rapidly adopted by policymakers and also forest owners. For that, effective knowledge transfer mechanism must be strengthened. So we have to work in all different directions and levels that our messages are sent out and received timely and in the accurate manner. And maybe the last, that the key to achieve long-term success is to establish a shared vision and to facilitate the collaborative design of policies between researchers, decision makers, and practitioners. So this is something that I would like to address here. Okay, I think that's shortly all from me now. Thank you.
Marek, thanks very much. A very concise view on, and also reality check on how your work, and I was reminded on my own work when you work with policymakers, and Anja, you have been making reference to that. I think we experience all of that, as Marek just has referenced to. And also your third vision, I think that's exactly what you were saying about this embedded model now, that we have more actors in this model, and I think we could talk a little bit more later on. So Marek, thanks for now. And again, colleagues, if you have a question already now, please write it in the chat. So far, the chat only consists of messages from artificial intelligence assistants who tell us that they summarize the meeting. Actually, I would be very interested if they summarize the same. No, but having said that, our last, but certainly not least, speaker in this row of reactions to the keynote is Ebba Henning Planck. Ebba is the head of the Lesen unit of the Forest Europe process in Sweden, and Sweden currently chairs Forest Europe for this and the next year, and you're already planning the next ministerial conference for June. Ebba holds a Master's of Science in Industrial Engineering and Management, and has extensive experience in international programming and management. She's committed to sustainability and works to strengthen dialogue, coordination, and knowledge exchange to support the long-term sustainable management of Europe's forests. Ebba, we're very much looking forward to your view, because you are in the middle of leading a pan-European process that works directly at the science policy interface.
Thank you very much, Peter. And yes, we are just right now halfway through the Swedish chairmanship. So And thank you very much to IUFRO for inviting me to speak at this webinar. And I'm very excited to continue exploring this future collaboration. We have started some initial discussions already, and maybe that can be done in an integration forum. And many thanks also to Michael for the insightful overview of current trends and future directions in bridging science and policy. This topic is, of course, very close to the heart of Forest Europe. Just very short about Forest Europe, a voluntary high-level political process for dialogue on forests and forestry in Europe. Its voluntary nature fosters trust, ownership, and flexibility among its or our 45 signatories, allowing them to collaboratively strengthen sustainable forest management and provide suitable science-informed responses to current forest policy challenges. And let's start a discussion about the foundational elements of an effective science policy interface. In Forest Europe, we believe that this effective interface relies on a dynamic, evidence-based concept supported by comparable and regularly reviewed criteria and indicators. They should be high quality. You can please go back one slide. This one, yes, please. They should be regularly reviewed. Clear communication, coherent reporting are equally important, ensuring that scientific outputs remain understandable and relevant and timely. Timely was also mentioned by the previous speaker, very important here. The platforms should be inclusive and voluntary dialogue, and combined with a strong cross-sectoral and transboundary cooperation, which helps translate scientific knowledge into practical policy responses. And also a stable and well-resourced institutional framework is essential, and this is one of the focus areas during the Swedish chairmanship of Forest Europe, to safeguard the long-term stability of the process. Next slide, please. And also, let's move on and discuss the question how science can more effectively inform and support forest policy agendas. One way is to align research and monitoring with criteria and indicators, and the Forest Europe criteria indicators covering forest resources, health, productivity, biodiversity, protective functions, and socioeconomics provides a common structure that makes scientific evidence directly relevant for policy. And by improving this data collection and analysis for the quantitative indicators and linking findings to the qualitative indicators, science delivers more actionable and comparable information. And I think this here we should have the embedded structure, not one direction or bidirectional, but embedded. The push and pull, the pull should come from the policymakers, and the push of available criteria should come from the scientists. And using these criteria and indicators as a communication tool helps translate complex research into policy-ready insights. And this is reinforced every 5th year through the State of Europe's Forests, the report, where scientific input is essential for delivering coherent Europe-wide assessments. Next slide, please. And another interesting question is, in this context, is also what successful models of science policy collaboration can be scaled up. And one such model that has been established by Forest Europe is the high-level policy dialogues, HLPDs. They provide an effective and high-level format for timely dialogue on emerging forest-related issues. And they bring together policymakers, scientists, and stakeholders to jointly assess new risks, align knowledge needs, and shape coordinated policy responses. This model is flexible and scalable and replicable across regions and sectors. And the format gives science a more direct channel into political debate on urgent topics. And we had just one recent example on this. Just 2 weeks ago, we organized an HLPD on geopolitical crisis and preparedness in the forest sector. And this dialogue demonstrated how scientific risk assessments, the role of forests in resilience, market analysis, supply chain, and security insights can directly inform high-level policymakers on emerging topics to enable sound decisions about crisis preparedness in the forestry sector. Next slide, please. Another successful model of science policy collaboration that can be scaled up is the establishment of implementation mechanisms or knowledge platforms. And this science policy collaboration demonstrates how structured cooperation between scientists, national experts, and policy processes can create durable knowledge platforms across Europe. And there are 2 such examples of implementing mechanisms within Forest Europe or spin-off projects from Forest Europe, being IUFRO-Gen and FORRISK. IUFRO-Gen coordinates and promotes the conservation of sustainable use of forest genetic resources in Europe, providing scientific guidance, fostering collaboration, and developing strategies to safeguard genetic diversity. And FORRISK, on the other hand, is a pan-European hub that unites experts and policymakers to assess forest risks and develop strategies for resilient, sustainable forests. And these 2 examples demonstrate that long-term science policy collaborations from Forest Europe, 35 years now, built on shared data sets, continuous learning, and cross-country cooperation can produce concrete outcomes, such as these knowledge platforms. And the establishment of such implementing mechanisms can successfully be scaled up, and similar initiatives may well emerge in the future from Forest Europe or other actors. Next slide, please. Another such model of science policy collaboration that perhaps might not be able to be scaled up, but nevertheless should be mentioned as a good example of science policy collaboration, is the Forest Europe Ministerial Conference, which functions as the highest level platform for structured, evidence-informed political dialogue on forest in the pan-European region. And held regularly since 1990, the Ministerial Conference creates a stable long-term structure where science and policy institutions can interact continuously. The Ministerial Conference is a platform for discussing long-term and emerging issues and focuses on forest-related challenges where scientific input is essential for sound policy responses. And this decision-making is consensus-driven. This Ministerial Conference combines political authority, structured scientific input, and regular cross-country coordination. And the conference represents a robust model of science policy collaboration. And in 6 months, we will host the Ministerial Conference in Stockholm, 2nd and 3rd of June. And then we will welcome ministers in the pan-European region responsible for forestry and forest-related policies, and several delegates from European countries and the European Commission and observer organizations and countries from all over the world. Next slide, please. And thank you so much for your attention. And just to sum up, the foundational elements of an effective forest science policy interface from a Forest Europe perspective are science-based and regularly updated criteria and indicators, and an inclusive dialogue on high-level voluntary platform. Thank you so much.
Ebba, thank you very much for providing us with an update on what's going on, and also highlighting the science policy history of the process since 1990. I think it's always very nice to remember that has always been an important pillar of the Forest Zero process. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, now it's time for questions and interaction among ourselves and with the speakers, also the speakers among themselves, so whatever you choose. If there are questions, please raise your hand and I'll try to see that and give you the floor. If there are no hands, I will ask a question, but I would like to give the floor to all the participants first, of course. No questions so far, but then I'll ask a question to all of you. I mean, you've hinted at different the models and what is successful and what is a challenge. Is it possible to identify some factors for successful science policy interaction? I'm asking because what is only 10% directly used for political decision making. 90% of our knowledge might go behind back doors, might change behavior, but you will never get the credit for that because they will not the political sphere will not credit you for that they have changed a course because your research was there. And that is sometimes also a difficult point. Has that changed, or is there, with the embedded system that Michael was presenting, are there new ways of how we can be successful? So I would be very interested in your views on that. Anja.
Yeah, thanks. I think one of the main factor, if you could extract something, is that as scientists, we need to form coalitions. We need to work with communication experts. And I hope I'm not going to offend anybody in here, but I think scientists are terrible communicators. So recognizing that, and actually also recognizing the value of your communication colleagues, I think it's really key. And in that as well, joining forces with lobbyists, because there's a whole bunch of people out there whose job it is to influence other people. And so I think there's a lot, so my main thing is like, we need to be humble. We need to understand what we are good in and what we're not good in. We need to, in the scientific part, we call those boundary partners. We need to find boundary partners, and we would need to find unlikely bad partners.
Thanks. No, I think I couldn't agree more. Communication is a whole different game, and it's good to provide the experts with how to communicate. Thanks, Anja. Any other takes? Marek, yes, please.
Yeah, I agree with Anja that the communication is very, very important, and there is something to learn, and to form the coalitions. I like that that Anja was pointing out, and research communication. Me and my colleagues, we have experience in forestry research communication for about 3 years now. So every month we are sending out at least two short summaries of the recent research papers that we have been publishing ourselves or in our neighboring countries. And so this is I would say it's a success story. So the practitioners or people working in the sector, and you can also sometimes it's easy to find it and then send somebody who wants to have this specific or has a specific topic that is under discussion, and then it's already written in the native language and in a science popular way. So, and the aim is that it should be in simple language that everybody would understand, because quite often in science we want to go into methodological details, and this is not relevant. As I said before, the message is important. Tell the message. Just a few points. What is the main idea of the core of the core findings, and that's all. But in simple terms. But of course, you have to be active in the society as well. So that's something you should talk to people. not only with researchers, but people in the culture, people in our policymakers, people in business. So we have to be more proactive and interactive, so to say. So this is also something. And sometimes to get into this, let's say, into changes in the regulations or let's say in Forest Act, for example, it's many years of work. It's a lot of years to work and you have to be consistent. So this is also important. It's not that one time I write something and then that's all. You have to tell your story all the time, so to say. So that's shortly all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We all know that, of course, the world is full of also diverging interests. So sometimes that's not so easy, yeah, to come through with the message. And also the forest sector very often is averse to communicating too much. It's very, looking more inwards than outwards. But that's just a personal note. Michael, what's your take?
Yes, what's my take on the success factors? I would fully agree that communication is very important, but from our perspective and from our research, it's not the only success factor. Yes, of course, you have to communicate better, and many scientists are not able to speak in easy language and nobody understands them and so on. That's really an important issue. But I think it connects with another issue that scientists communicate badly because they don't understand politics in a way that it should be understood. They are not aware of the political interests and what relevance power has. Yes, power does not listen to data or something like this. And some of the success factors I would suggest is first, you have always tried to be credible. So sometimes scientists talk about issues, they never have done research on it. So this is very bad. So you can only be credible if you rely on your own research, your own data and these things. Then repetition, what the colleague before said, is very good. Yes, always telling the same story. Sometimes you find an ear. Yes, that's good. And I think what is as well very important that scientists even make clear that there are knowledge gaps, yes, that they don't know everything. So we have knowledge about, I don't know, climate change and climate issues, but there are still some existing knowledge gaps. We have to do more research and we cannot give you the right advisory recipe now. So it's a little bit adjusting the scientific policy advice towards existing knowledge gaps and scientific uncertainties. And then some of the most important, I think, misunderstandings of the science policy interface by scientists themselves is they think they have more power than, I don't know, ordinary citizens, lobbyists or something like this, because they claim, oh, we have scientific arguments. But in the political process, scientific arguments has no own power compared to other arguments. So it's just another source of arguments maybe, but political actors always judge these kind of arguments in another rationality. Yes, they think it's good for me or not, and then we can apply something or not. Yes, that's very important to be aware of it. And it's very important to just provide the really relevant information. So that's a critical point as well. Sometimes many scientific advisory products are not relevant. Yes, we have talked before. We have heard it before. Yes, too long, too big reports. No political actor can do it in a given time to read all of this. And so it's have to be really credible and relevant for the current issues political actors deal with. Yes, and you have to be short. Yes, we have talked before about it. And to be aware that politics always act under time constraints and under situations in which the uncertainty is very high. Yes. And you need this target group orientation of your intermediation. Yes, of course, you have to talk in another way to political actors or to high-level politicians or bureaucrats or, I don't know, local people who are living in their forests and these something. Yes, that's very interesting. We have learned this by the hard way here in our project. We are doing research. It's connected to European Union, of course, yes, because we have learned here that the science policy advisory systems in the 3 countries we study here, DRC, Gabon, and Cameroon, are very much donor-driven. Yes, and you have said this before, Anja, right in the beginning, that everybody who's talking now about forest is talking about carbon sinks. Yes, it's about carbon and climate and so on. And the multifunctionality of forest is a little bit, I don't know, stands in the background. Yes. And we have learned here that many of these advisory systems are built around the expectations of international donors and do not much integrate the perspectives of local people living with the forests, dependent on the forests and so on. And the other thing is we have learned a lot of different integration forms. We never thought this is relevant, but we learned, for example, that people here communicate via WhatsApp groups, for example, yes, because here's not a stable connection with internet or something like this. Scientific knowledge, experiential knowledge is shared via WhatsApp, and this is some interesting integration form. So my suggestion is to study the kind of existing integration forums and to adjust scientific policy advice in a way that it really grasps these kind of existing interaction as well. So this is very important, but the most important statement for me is always to make clear your own roles. We have heard a lot of this very good approach of CIFOR-ICRAF. Yes, I've learned this in our project and so on. I think you are something like a role model. Yes, you sponsor scientific research, you do this integration and so on. And this is very good, but it's not the normal role of every of these scientific science policy interfaces. Yes, sometimes the roles and the tasks are not really clear. And so my suggestion is always to make clear which kind of role you take as a scientist. Are you speaking as a scientist, presenting scientific results, or do you interpret your own results against, I don't know, political needs? And then you speak more in a way of a policy advisor or even as a politician. But it's very important for the public discourse that everyone is clear what is based on scientific findings and what is something that you make out of it. So this is very important as well to become credible in science policy interactions. And the last statement, yes, I found it very interesting what you have told right in the beginning of your talk, Anja, this carbon, yes. And there's a very interesting paper that was written, I think, from Esther Turnout from the Netherlands and colleagues, and she discussed very critically that forest governance is currently internationally led by the carbon discourse and not so much anymore on biodiversity, indigenous needs and these things. And this is a very interesting topic that we face here as well in our project. We have to deal with this because the needs of the people living from the forests are not less relevant than our carbon sink interests. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. You know, this is, I think that the carbon focus means some say it's the new wake water theory. We in the German-speaking world know this Kielwasser theory. So it's that you say, well, the new thing that solves everything is just for carbon and all the other services will appear automatically. So I think that's an argument against it, and maybe we should also use that in our communication again. Ebba, yes, please.
Yes, thank you very much. And I heard Michael say that you also need to repeat your message. So I will just repeat what everybody already said. I mean, I totally agree. Communication is, of course, very important. And I also think that we need to remember that we are part of an embedded system. Even though the rules should be clear, of course, we are part of a system, and what comes out must also come in when we speak about the communication, of course. And I also like what Anja highlighted earlier about the emotions and communications, how you get the emotions. And I think these criteria and indicators, they certainly can create a lot of emotions. And I think that's what we need to understand also when we communicate about them. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ebba. So colleagues, any other questions? Please feel free. Raise your hands or write in the chat. Thank you, Anna, for your point in the chat. But any others? Don't see any. But then I would come back to one other issue, Michael, that you were raising, and it's connected. You said use the right forum when you said in the model, the embedded model. That's now, and I think we all have been talking about that in the CIFOR-ICRAF example and all that, how to integrate different perspectives, views. But how do we know when there is there, or is an advice what is the right forum? Next question. Now, Michael.
No, I think Anja has raised her hand before. Yes, maybe
Yes, Anja,
she wants
please.
to say something.
Hey,
Yeah, she was
but you can
quicker.
just go ahead since you are in the conversation. I can come in later.
No. Okay. Yeah, just a quick answer. I think it cannot be decided in advance. Yes, it's part of the research process. And that would be another recommendation from me, that we take it not for granted, that we always know for a certain scientific topic, for a certain forest-related topic, that we right from the beginning know where the important information is shared. So it's very good to do a part of research on studying the existing integration forums, what are possible alternatives if we design new ones, and what are the pros and cons. That would be my answer. Yes, it's part of the research. We have to invest more time, more resources in these kind of applied research projects to check out where are the knowledge transfer takes place. Yes, not just doing, I don't know, if we need tailor-made solutions, especially regarding different sub-policy fields and regional issues and so on. Not, I don't know, not everything is good for every problem. Yes.
I have a follow-up question, but Anja, you first.
Yeah, just, I mean, I couldn't agree more with what I just said. It's part of what we would call an appraisal phase. I mean, you gotta know your landscape, and that means both the physical but also the actors, and you work through local partners. But just a cautionary principle here as well, like, you know, we, especially when we design projects, you always like build in this like, oh, stakeholder forum, the platform, and you have, and then it's like, wait a minute, you actually have to remember that the people it's the technical people within the ministries, they only have 5 days a week, and they are very busy people. So you do not want to create all these like side events where they're supposed to be. I think Michael, that's what you said earlier about don't create your own forum. Try to find, where do you get them? Where can you make it easy for them, instead of taking them out and create more burden? I think that's a really important one.
No, absolutely. Thanks for that. I think that's something we really can all implement and learn from. My follow-up question would be, Michael, you were saying that we have these classical forest institutions like my organization, the Austrian Research Center for Forests and all that, although of course we try to expand. But do you feel that that should change? I mean, now given the policy landscape and the de facto forest policy in the European space where it's regulated in many other fields, would you say we should leave our forest orientation and be more diverse, have different names, or because that is an interesting discussion. I think that always comes up, and also for IUFRO sometimes that is the debate on what is the core of IUFRO. Is it the forest research or is it the environmental research, just to say something?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question, of course. Yeah, my how to say this? In German, you say my Bauchgefühl. I'm not quite sure how to translate this accordingly, but
I think it's gut feeling.
By intuition, I would say concentrate on your strength, because, for example, in climate policy, there are a lot of other advisory bodies and so on. And I think to expand without any concrete target is not the best strategy. Yes, it's good to have these kind of institutions. And I know a little bit more from, of course, the German background where I come from. The forest policy is very much a federal policy in different Bundesländer, in federal states in Germany. And so we have this landscape of the so-called Forstliche Versuchsanstalt, this called these kind of departmental research institutions. And they are very relevant because they understand the different regional forest policy issues based on the implementation of, for example, European fundings, other tasks from the federal level and so on the ground. Yes, and this is a very big advantage. Yes, and I think there's some danger if you I don't know, if you expand without clearly doing before an evaluation what potential dangers and what are potential benefits of expanding your institutional setting or institutional path. So it's a little bit in between, I would say.
No, thank you. I didn't expect that was an easy question, but it's something we all think always have to evaluate for ourselves. Where are we and where should we go? And I think, Marek, you mentioned also, I mean, this integration capability of these different aspects that forests always provide. Since Rio, we know it's very difficult to find a global solution to a forest commitment. And so that demonstrates how diverse the interests always have been and still are. I think that's part of the issues that we're grappling with. Yeah, dear colleagues, final chance for questions. We are kind of moving towards the finish line with this webinar. So please feel free, but while you're thinking, I'll invite our colleagues, Ebba, Marek, Anja, and Mike, if you have some famous last words that you would like to provide us with so that we know what to do in our next weeks and months to come. Marek, yes, please.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for this webinar that we had today and these valuable discussions, and it's important that we pick up the messages from here and synthesize them and have a short one pager or something that we want to share with a broader audience. So this is shortly from me that I like that the meetings end with something that we can share with a broader audience or the not only in IUFRO but elsewhere in the wider circles. Thank you.
Thank you, Marek, for that suggestion, and we will be more than happy to do exactly that. And Mirjana and Veronica, who are the background team here, they are nodding, so we will exactly do that. Thanks very much. Ebba.
Thank you very much, and I agree with Marek what he said. And I mean, the full focus now for Forest Europe is organizing the next ministerial conference, and also in a near future also to provide the data from the State of Europe's Forest report. So we're looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ebba. Anja, please.
Yeah, I mean, I hope they're not famous last words. I mean, you know, Peter, this is the opening of a starting of us all working together, right? So it's the starting, not the final word. I mean, I would very much look forward to have follow-up discussions with everybody in the room to say, okay, you know, what are our common messages around carbon and Michael, you made it really clear about the multifunctionality, and most of us I guess that's the advantage we have coming from Europe. We come from societies that love the forest. We are hunting nations, most of us. So there is a huge society value in forest. So how do we bring that back? How do we emphasize on that? So I would very much like to see us collectively see how we fine-tune our key messages and how we support this through our work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you very much for having me here in this very, very nice setting. And I'm really looking forward to meeting you again, talking about these issues and discussing and maybe getting integrated as well in your further process of the SPIN initiative. Is very interesting for me. So thank you very much. And my famous last words are don't overestimate scientific power, but never underestimate political power. That's my message.
That's the reality check, absolutely. Thanks also for the chat, Elaine and Anja. You have exchanged views, so thanks very much for that. And I hope that this, and I fully agree with you, Anja, this is a start, and it was very educational also for me, and I think we've learned a lot. There are many factors from co-creation to the embedded projects to emotion. To these multifunctional aspects. I think we have a really good set of points that we would like to summarize on a one-pager or something like that, so that also we are able to digest and use it for the further process. So I think this was very, very helpful. The real last words, of course, always belong to the president. And so Daniela, I'll invite you for some presidential words at the end.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Peter, and in particular, thanks a lot for all the others for the keynote, but as well for the very good and deep thoughts. I think there were not only famous last words, but as well many other famous words in this meeting. So I really liked it a lot. And I just wanted to highlight, I think, what is important for me, because some of the things already Michael said, but as well others have mentioned that, saying that with our mechanism of the spin and the mechanism of SAM, so this swift action mechanism in IUFRO, I think we are really coming into that, because you were placing saying it needs to be timely. You don't need to write this long report. It needs to be short. And we have the chance to use the expertise from international experts from all over the world to directly respond to that in a very short notice. And I think this is what we really want to advance. And we are very happy, Ebba, as well, to support the Forest Europe process with that and engage further with you in this regard. So that will be really wonderful to do that. And this is as well responding to Michael saying that, well, we are trying to really embed it into the region and linking it as well to existing formats. So this is what we do. We have this webinar forums, but this is as well why we say, okay, why not going where already things are taking place, like the Forest Europe or other organizations or events that are taking place. So we are going there. We are not asking other people to come to us and in this way organize something new. And I was really fascinated by this important words about climatization discourse. I think this is really what we recognize more and more, that there is no forest expertise needed anymore, obviously, in this room, because it is all about climate. And I'm not sure whether foresters are totally aware of that and whether all the competencies we need to really cover that are there for the moment. So this is for sure a theme that needs to be explored as well further in the future, to see what does it mean for forest sciences, what does it mean for forest education and for any stakeholders, if there is so much of a new knowledge what we need to cover, if we are don't want to be pressed to the periphery and saying this is in the next phase, it will be banks and investors who are having that in their hands. And of course, emotions and narratives, I think we could learn from that, and we need to learn a lot about that. So thanks a lot about all these wonderful words. And there were many, many more of them. And Peter, I will not mention them all, but for this one pager, I can keep on going with my notes here, and I will hope to bring that in there. So thanks a lot for being here. It was really interesting, very nice, wonderful kickoff. Thanks to everyone.
Mm-hmm. Daniela, thanks very much. And again, colleagues, thanks for participating in this first webinar. We will look forward to welcoming you again in different formats like that. If you would like to be part of the spin, please also drop us a note. There are plenty of possibilities to be active. We need your expertise also in developing exactly what we were discussing, the science policy interface with the knowledge that we are having. My special thanks again to our speakers, to Michael, to Anja, to Marek, and to Ebba. This was terrific. Thanks very much. We've learned a lot, and we very much look forward to interacting with you in one or the other way also in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much, and see you all soon in person or through the webinar and the IUFRO network. Thanks very much, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Tschüss.